I never thought the day would come when the very child I gave up my life to raise, the one I held through every tear after her mother, my daughter, passed, would look me in the eye and reduce me to nothing more than a servant. I never imagined that love, sacrifice, and sleepless nights could be forgotten so easily, as if they meant nothing at all. It happened at the Hastings Country Club. White linen tablecloths, glasses shaped like teardrops, waiters who folded your napkin when you stood up. I'd worn my best slacks. The pearl ones my daughter used to say made me look elegant without trying. I even had my hair done. I thought I was being invited as family. Turns out, I was there as background noise. Blair, my granddaughter, 18, glowing with that glossy sheen that only comes from expensive moisturizer and never having to worry about money, was sitting with 3 other girls from her elite prep school. They all looked like they'd just walked out of a catalog. Long hair, long legs, long noses turned up like they were smelling something rotten. And then it happened. One of the girls asked, "Wait, who's that woman sitting with us?" Blair didn't miss a beat. She smiled that sugary, careless smile and said, "Oh, her? That's just my family helper. Kind of like a housekeeper/nanny. She helped raise me or whatever." And they all laughed like it was a funny misunderstanding. Like it wasn't my name she didn't say, like I wasn't the woman who sold her wedding ring to pay for Blair's freshman textbooks. I didn't say anything, didn't make a scene. I folded my napkin quietly, stood up, and walked out with every inch of dignity I had left. My heart was beating in my ears, but my face? Calm. Ice. Because if I'd opened my mouth, I would have screamed. I drove home in silence, no music, no tears, just a dull roar inside my chest, the kind that made it hard to breathe without choking on your own regret. I'd raised Blair after her mother, my only daughter, died in that drunk driving accident. Blair was only 8. I was 60 and tired and grieving, but I didn't hesitate. I gave her everything, and she called me just the help. By the time I pulled into the driveway of my modest little house, something inside me had shifted, not broken, hardened. Because that moment wasn't just humiliating, it was clarifying. I had let her become someone who could look at me and see nothing. Not love, not gratitude, not even recognition, just utility, like a credit card that didn't have a spending limit, until now. I walked into my house, still silent, and stood in front of the wall of family photos. There was one of me holding Blair on her first day of kindergarten, her missing front teeth making her smile lopsided. Another of us baking cookies when she was 10, flour dust in her hair. And then, near the bottom, one I almost forgot existed. My daughter, Lauren, holding newborn Blair in her arms, looking straight into the lens like she was handing me a promise. Please protect her. Love her enough for both of us. And I had. But I didn't raise her to be cruel. I didn't raise her to think money made her better than anyone. I didn't raise her to laugh at the hands that fed her. So I made myself a cup of tea, strong, no sugar, sat down at my kitchen table, and started writing, not a letter, a list. What I paid for, what I owed, what she owed me, and what I would no longer give. I'm not one for dramatics. But that Sunday morning, over scrambled eggs and shame, my granddaughter made me disappear. And now, I plan to return the favor, one step at a time. The silence of my house hit harder than usual when I stepped inside that afternoon. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that makes you notice the tick of the clock, the creak of the floor, the way the refrigerator hums like it's trying to fill the space where a person should be. I set my purse down on the counter and stared at the chipped tile beneath my feet. Same kitchen floor where I'd made Blair her first grilled cheese after Lauren's funeral. Same counter where she did her middle school science fair projects while I stayed up cutting colored paper and gluing her presentation board together. Same cracked linoleum, same faithful kettle, same me. Just older, just more alone than I had ever let myself feel. I walked into the living room and turned on the lamp beside the faded armchair. The soft yellow glow washed over the wall where the family photos hung. God, that wall. Every square inch of it was a history of sacrifice. Lauren's baby shower, Blair's 5th birthday, Graduation from the third private school I couldn't afford but paid for anyway. Prom night. I had taken that picture myself. Blair in a red dress that cost more than my monthly pension check, smiling like she'd already won life. She looked beautiful. But the girl in the photo wasn't mine. Not anymore. I lowered myself into the armchair and stared straight ahead. No tears. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because it was a kind of ache that tears wouldn't solve. It was too old, too deep. You don't cry when the dam breaks. You stand back and watch what gets washed away. Blair's mother, my Lauren, had been light in human form. Kind, sharp, impossible to replace. And when that drunk driver ran that red light and snatched her from us, I didn't think. I just became what Blair needed. Not because I wanted to be a hero, because I couldn't stand to see what was left of my daughter disappear too. And for a while, Blair needed me. She was sweet, thoughtful. She'd bring me breakfast on Mother's Day, even if it was soggy cereal and a sticky flower from the backyard. She called me Nana Bear. She used to tell me she wanted to be a nurse, just like you, so I can take care of people too. But that changed the day she turned 13, and her father's new wife bought her a Louis Vuitton wallet. And from there, every year chipped away at the girl I knew. The wallet turned into a shopping addiction. The thank yous turned into expectations. The girl who used to cry when I was sick now rolled her eyes when I said no. Her father, Caleb, had long since remarried into a Silicon Valley life. Holiday wire transfers, and the occasional forced smile Christmas card. But no real parenting. The custody papers he'd signed after Lauren's funeral made sure of that. I didn't just raise her. I funded her. Her designer bags, her Italian summer programs, her rent in a fancy apartment uptown. All came out of my savings. My retirement. Every time she called, it was always, "Nana, I hate to ask." And every time, I gave. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought if I gave enough, I could keep Lauren alive. But what was the point in giving someone the world if they forget who handed it to them? The quiet of that evening wasn't peaceful, it was judgmental. Every tick of the clock asked the same question. How long are you going to let her spit on the life you built for her? I stared at the photo of Lauren. I whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have said no sooner." But I wasn't going to apologize forever. I had breath left. I had backbone. And for once in my life, I was going to use them for me. The next morning, I called Dolores. I didn't plan it. My hands moved on their own. Muscle memory dialed her number like it had a heartbeat of its own. We'd been friends since nursing school, half a century of secrets, arguments, inside jokes, and casseroles delivered during grief. When she picked up, her voice was already suspicious. "You never call in the morning unless you're dying or pissed off." "I'm not dying," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "So pissed off then? Good. I'll make tea." By the time I got to her house, 15 minutes away, nestled under a shady maple tree, with wind chimes that never matched, she had already set out lemon biscuits and poured 2 cups of Earl Grey. The kind we both used to sneak during night shifts, when patients were stable and the world had gone quiet. She looked at me over the rim of her cup and waited. No small talk. No pretense. I told her everything. The brunch. Blair's words. The laughter. The way I walked out like a ghost wearing pearls. Dolores didn't gasp. She didn't say, "Oh no," or, "I'm so sorry." She just leaned back in her chair and whispered, "It always starts with money." I blinked at her. "Excuse me? That's how mine started too." She sipped her tea. "My niece took out loans in my name, racked up 30 grand on credit cards she said were for her design business. I was still sending her birthday checks when she told people I was a bitter old woman who wouldn't let go of her purse strings. The silence between us felt heavier than the story. She placed her cup down gently. "You want to know the worst part?" I didn't stop until I heard her call me a stepping stone. Like I was a rock to get across a river she didn't want to fall into. I swallowed hard. She called me her servant, Del. Laughed about it like I wasn't sitting 5 feet away. Dolores reached across the table and gripped my hand. Her nails were chipped. Mine, too. That's how we'd always known we were real. Then stop funding the lie. She didn't say it cruelly. She said it like a nurse setting a broken bone. Firm. Necessary. A little painful. I looked down at our intertwined hands. I've been paying for everything, Del. Her rent. Her credit cards. That trip to Greece? The one she said she saved for? I paid half. I told myself I was giving her a future. Dolores gave me that look. The one that could cut through delusion like a scalpel. You weren't giving her a future, Margaret. You were buying back your daughter. The words stung, because they were true, and I couldn't pretend otherwise. I don't know how to stop, I whispered. You start by saying no, she said. You start by reminding yourself that being needed isn't the same as being loved. I closed my eyes. What if she hates me for it? She already does, Dolores said gently. She just doesn't know it yet. But she will. The second her card gets declined, and she doesn't have you to fix it. We sat in silence. Then I took a deep breath and said the words I hadn't let myself say out loud. I'm done, Del. No more money. No more pretending. I'm gonna start writing my will tomorrow. Her face softened, not with pity, but pride. Good, she said. Make sure it has her name crossed out in pen so she knows you meant it. We laughed. For the first time in days, I felt like myself again. Not a servant. Not a stepping stone. Not a purse with legs. Just Margaret. And Margaret was done being used. 3 days later, Blair called me. Not a text. Not a hi or hey. An actual call, like I was worth hearing. I knew what it meant before I answered. Blair never called unless she wanted something she couldn't get herself. Hi, Nana, she sang. The voice of a girl who still thought sweetness could fix anything. Who'd never had to clean up a mess that wasn't done for her. I miss you, she added, just a half beat too late. I didn't play into it. You sound busy, she giggled. Ugh, so busy. Finals are killing me. And there's this Italy trip for our cultural studies class. It's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I leaned against the kitchen counter and stared at the cracked tile I still hadn't fixed. I see, I said. So, the deposit's due by Friday, she continued, voice feather-light. It's only $3,200 now, but then the rest is due later. I wouldn't ask, but Mom always said you'd support my education no matter what. There it was. The guilt anchor. Always Mom. Always Lauren. Like I was supposed to keep bleeding because my daughter couldn't. What Blair didn't know was that I'd already written her out of my will the night before. I had spent the better part of the evening on the phone with a lawyer Dolores recommended, Mr. Patel. Calm and efficient, not even surprised when I told him the granddaughter I raised was about to find herself removed from every document that mattered. You want to redirect the estate? He asked. I want to reclaim my dignity, I said. He understood that more than I expected. Now, standing there with the phone to my ear, Blair chattering on about Tuscan villas and pasta-making workshops, I didn't interrupt her. I let her believe she still held the power. That sounds like a beautiful opportunity, I said softly. There was a beat of silence. You mean it? You'll cover it? I smiled. I always support your growth, sweetheart. The truth was, I was about to support a lot of girls' growth, but not hers. Blair squealed. Nana, thank you. You're the best. I seriously don't know what I'd do without you. You'll find out soon enough. We hung up, and I sat down at my desk. I opened my checkbook and wrote a check, not for Blair, but for the attorney's retainer. Then I pulled out the thick manila envelope I had started filling the night before. It held every receipt, transfer, and bill I'd ever paid on Blair's behalf. I was building a paper trail, not to punish her, but to remind myself of just how much I had given. It was easy to forget when she called me Nana in that sing-song voice. Easy to let one smile erase 10 years of entitlement. But paper didn't lie. I took out another folder. This one labeled Scholarship Fund L.A. Whitmore Girls Grant. Named after Lauren. Not Blair. I'd already started the process. My lawyer would finalize the foundation paperwork by the end of the month. The seed money would come from the heirloom necklace I'd never worn, the one my mother gave me on my wedding day. I didn't need it. I needed peace. And I wanted it to mean something again. Because if Blair was going to call me the help, then it was time I helped someone who deserved it. When I closed the folder, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. Blair thought she'd won. Again. Thought I was still wrapped around her finger like tissue paper. But what she didn't know, the hand that used to write her checks had already signed her away. The receptionist at Fairhurst Academy smiled politely when I walked in, heels echoing off polished marble. "I'm here to donate books," I said, lifting the small box in my hands. It wasn't a lie. The books were real, used, but well-kept biographies of pioneering women. But that wasn't why I was there. "Oh, that's lovely," the receptionist said. "We don't get many grandparents coming in," I smiled. "I try to support in any way I can." She buzzed me through, and I stepped into the corridor, following the faint hum of chatter and distant laughter. I hadn't been here in over a year. Last time, it was parent night, and Blair introduced me as her, quote, guardian for paperwork stuff. I'd brushed it off then. I told myself she was nervous, ashamed of being raised by an old woman with arthritic hands and orthopedic shoes. But deep down, I knew better. I made my way to the library, dropped the books off at the donation desk, and lingered long enough to observe. Blair wasn't hard to find. She never was. She was perched on one of the high-backed chairs in the Commons, surrounded by her usual orbit of wealth-draped classmates. She laughed with her head tilted back, like someone who believed her reflection deserved applause. I stood off to the side, out of view, and watched. "You should have seen her house," Blair was saying. "So quaint, like hand-stitched curtains and actual teacups." I felt like I was visiting my great-grandmother's time capsule. The other girls laughed. Not harshly, not mockingly, just comfortably, like they were used to her performing. A teacher walked by, and the laughter quieted. As the woman passed, Blair's smile dropped like a mask she didn't need anymore. She pulled out her phone and started texting without looking up. I felt a weight shift in my chest. Not pain, recognition. The girl I raised, the one who used to cry when her goldfish died, who once gave me a hand-drawn World's Best Nana certificate, was nowhere in sight. This Blair wasn't soft or grateful, or even particularly kind. She was polished, loud, hollow. "Mrs. Whitmore?" A voice startled me. I turned to see a woman in a navy sweater and sensible shoes. The headmistress, Mrs. Halden, if I remembered correctly. "I just wanted to say thank you for the donation," she said, smiling. "And, if I may, I've been meaning to speak with someone from Blair's family." "Oh?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She hesitated, then glanced toward the common room. "She's bright, charismatic, but," the woman sighed, "her academics are slipping. She's failing 2 courses, and, well, her attitude toward staff has become difficult." I said nothing. "I wasn't sure if anyone at home was aware," she continued carefully. "She speaks as though she has no oversight, no limitations." "That's probably accurate," I said quietly. The woman smiled sadly. "We see it sometimes. Young people mistaking privilege for purpose." I nodded. I suppose that's something we both used to believe she'd outgrow. Before we parted, I asked one question. If, say, a donor wanted to support students who actually needed help, girls with good hearts and no means, would you be open to that? Her eyes lit up. "Absolutely." "Good," I said. "You'll be hearing from my attorney." I left without speaking to Blair. There was nothing to say. Not anymore. She didn't even know I'd been there. She didn't see me. But she would feel me. Because while she sat there, pretending to be royalty, I was already building a kingdom where she didn't belong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my old leather-bound journal open in front of me, the one Lauren gave me the year she got her driver's license. She said, "Write something real in it every day, no fluff." I'd laughed at the time, told her my life was too boring to fill a whole journal. Turns out, love takes up pages. So does disappointment. I stared at the blank line under today's date and slowly began to write. I saw her today. Not the girl I raised. The one who used to tuck herself under my arm during thunderstorms. I saw the girl money built. And money, I'm learning, has terrible taste. I paused, pressing the pen against the paper hard enough to dent it. The truth is, Blair used to be soft. She used to make me laugh so hard I'd cry over burned pancakes and glue-covered crafts. I used to wake up to her singing from the bathroom and the sound of her tiny feet running down the hall. Back then, she didn't care what brand her shoes were or how quaint my house was. Back then, she loved me because I loved her, fully, loudly, always. But I see now, I gave too much. Not just money. Permission. Power. The belief that love meant never saying no. And that kind of love, it doesn't raise a person. It cages them, locks them in the delusion that love comes with no consequence, that someone will always be there with a blank check and a kind voice. That was me. That's who I became, the cage builder, the hand that gently enabled her to forget how to stand on her own. I thought I was honoring Lauren's memory, thought that giving Blair everything was the same as keeping Lauren alive. But Lauren would have told her no. Lauren was kind, but she wasn't soft. She would have demanded respect. And I never did, until now. I looked over at the photo of Lauren and Blair again, Lauren holding her like a gift she'd earned. And I finally admitted it. I was afraid of losing Blair, so I never taught her how to lose, how to cope, how to earn, how to take no for an answer without making someone feel like dirt for saying it. That wasn't love. That was fear dressed up as devotion. I closed the journal and sat back, exhaling hard. There was no rage in me tonight, no humiliation, no vengeance, just clarity. I'd spent too long believing I had to earn a place in a life I paid for. But the truth? Love that demands your silence, your bank account, and your pride, without giving back even a sliver of respect, is not love. It's a transaction, and I'm done paying. I made myself a cup of tea and stood in the doorway of my living room, looking around at all the furniture I'd dusted 1,000 times. The sofa where Blair and I used to read books. The rug she once threw up on after too much Halloween candy. The place still echoed with our history. But it didn't own me anymore. Tomorrow I'd cancel the Italy payment before she even knew it had been processed. Let her get her hopes up. Let her feel what it's like to depend on something that isn't guaranteed. I would stop shielding her from the world. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to the travel agency handling Blair's school trip to Italy. I need to cancel a payment, I said calmly. It was made in error. I'll take the cancellation fee, that's fine. They sounded surprised. Miss Whitmore? The woman asked. Are you sure? Your granddaughter confirmed the funds were cleared. Yes, I said, reaching for my cup of tea. She assumed wrong. The second call was to my lawyer. I want to finalize the transfer, I told him. Scholarship fund. Locked in. No adjustments, not even if she cries. Mr. Patel didn't laugh. Understood, he said gently. You're doing a hard thing, Ms. Whitmore, but the right thing. I hung up, sat in the silence, and let the stillness settle around me like a second skin. That afternoon, I began cutting. Not violently, quietly, like pruning dead flowers from a once beautiful garden. First, the luxury credit card she used for shopping sprees. Gone. I'd added her as an authorized user when she turned 16, thinking it would teach her responsibility. It taught her indulgence. I clicked Remove User without hesitation. Next, the monthly transfers for her apartment rent, an overpriced studio in a building with valet trash service and a rooftop pool. I called the bank and paused all auto debits. She's not on the lease? The banker confirmed. No, I said. It's all in my name. Then you're within your rights to end it. Perfect. Last, I logged into the boutique rewards programs. Yes, the ones I never used, but Blair did. The personal shopper accounts, the salon memberships, the priority points for a store where jeans cost $400. All of it. Closed, deactivated, erased. I didn't leave a note. I didn't send a warning. I wasn't giving her the dignity of a heads up. Because real life doesn't give you time to prepare when you've been coasting on someone else's generosity. Let her feel what it's like when the safety net disappears. By dinner, I had made my final move. I opened the wooden jewelry box on my dresser, lined in velvet, filled with things I'd once imagined passing down to her on her wedding day. But today wasn't about sentiment. It was about clarity. I picked up the heirloom brooch. Platinum, sapphire center, passed from my grandmother to me. Blair once asked to wear it to a formal event and forgot it on the floor of a limousine. That was the day I knew she saw treasure as decoration, not legacy. I took the brooch, wrapped it in tissue, and placed it in a smaller box labeled Auction, Friday Drop-Off. The proceeds would go directly into the Whitmore Girls Grant. No detours, no exceptions. Blair was about to learn what it meant to lose luxury she didn't earn. And the most satisfying part? I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to plead. I didn't have to explain a thing. Because this time, my silence would be the answer. This wasn't punishment. This was reality introducing itself. You called me your servant. You laughed like I was furniture with a bank account. And now? Now you'll learn what it feels like when the help walks out and locks the door behind her. I made myself toast and tea that night. I didn't cry. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder how she'd react when she noticed what had disappeared. Because I didn't need her reaction. I needed her to face the reality. The knock on my door didn't come with politeness. It came with fists, heavy, furious, rhythmless, not knocking, but pounding. I didn't flinch. I was in the kitchen, buttering toast. She didn't wait to be let in. The door flew open. She still had the spare key. Blair stormed in like a thunderclap wearing designer sneakers. "Are you serious right now?" she shouted, face red, cheeks streaked with a flush not from heat, but from embarrassment. I calmly placed a slice of toast on the plate beside my tea. "You cut off my card," she spat. "In public, Nana. At Celeste, my friends were with me. I couldn't even buy a bracelet." I stirred my tea once, then again. Slow, rhythmic. "And the apartment?" she went on, voice cracking. "My landlord called, said the rent was reversed. I was humiliated. Do you understand what you've done?" I looked at her, and for the first time, I really looked. She was shaking. Not from sadness, from fury. Not because she lost me, but because she lost the comfort I gave her. And that distinction? It meant everything. "You're angry about a bracelet," I said quietly, "but not about the way you've spoken to me. Not about calling me a servant in front of your friends." She blinked. Her mouth opened, then shut again. "That was a joke." "No," I interrupted. "That was a revelation." Her hands balled into fists. "You said you'd pay for the Italy trip. And then I changed my mind." She gasped like I'd slapped her. You don't get to change your mind." I set down my spoon, the clink of metal against ceramic, louder than her yelling. "I get to do whatever I want with what's mine. You don't get to live in a fantasy where love means no limits." Her lip trembled, but not with sorrow, with disbelief. "You're punishing me?" "No," I said, rising to my feet. "I'm letting you meet yourself, without my money cushioning the impact." She stared at me, like I'd grown a second head, like she couldn't understand. The woman in front of her was the same one who once spoon-fed her soup during the flu, who stayed up sewing sequins onto her dance costume because the store-bought one didn't sparkle enough. "You raised me," she said bitterly. "You taught me to expect help, to feel secure." "I raised you," I agreed, "but I didn't raise this." I walked past her, set the toast on the table. "You're welcome to sit," I said. "There's tea." Blair stood in the doorway, unmoving. No tears, no apology, just rage and ruin behind mascaraed eyes. And me? I was calm. Toast. Tea. Peace. That's what I had now. Because silence, when you've earned it, is louder than any tantrum. She finally spoke, voice low. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Figure it out." "Nana, you wanted to be seen as elite, Blair," I said, "so now you'll learn what it takes to maintain that image, without me." She turned without another word. Slammed the door so hard a picture frame rattled. I took a bite of toast. Still warm, still mine. She didn't text, didn't call, didn't show her face again. But I knew she hadn't learned a thing. Not yet. 3 days later, I heard through Dolores, who heard through her cousin's daughter's yoga instructor, a web only small towns could produce, that Blair was already seen arm in arm with her boyfriend again, Jasper, the hedge fund intern with a trust fund and a jawline. He's been picking up her tabs, Dolores said over the phone. Luxury brunch, Uber Black, even covered some boutique bag she forgot her wallet for. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't about love. Blair hadn't shifted. She'd just rerouted. Like a parasite jumping to the next host. Her mother would have wept. I just got to work. That week, I met with Mr. Patel again. We sat in his glass office. Papers spread like a map of the past, present, and future. My will. My assets. Every account with Blair's name hovering like smoke over what I'd built. I want it airtight, I said, tapping the table. No backdoor claims, no contest loopholes. Nothing she can charm her way through. He adjusted his glasses. We'll lock everything into the Whitmore Girls Grant. Irrevocable trust. Education specific. Not a cent can go toward handbags or beachfront selfies. Perfect. I added one clause myself. A personal touch. No beneficiary may access funds if they've received financial support from this estate while verbally or publicly humiliating the donor. Mr. Patel raised an eyebrow. You're allowed to be that specific. Good, I said. I want her to read it and see her own cruelty in black ink. The rest of that week, I moved in silence. Like a woman packing up after a flood. Not with sadness, but with precision. I closed the final shared account she'd used for emergencies. Cleared out the last savings account she probably thought of as hers. It had been under my name the whole time. I transferred every remaining asset into the scholarship fund. Then I signed the final page of the trust paperwork and sealed the folder shut. Done. All that remained was Blair's car. Technically, it was still mine. The title was in my name. I bought it after she threw a fit outside a used dealership. I can't be seen in something embarrassing, Nana. I caved, of course. I always had back then. Until now. This time, I called my old friend Lawrence, a mechanic with a tow truck and no love for spoiled kids. She's parked on Montrose, I told him. Luxury complex, spot 47. You want it repoed or polite? Polite, I said. But clear, he chuckled. She's not going to see it coming. By sunset, the car was gone. The complex management would notify her. I left the pink slip and final bill of sale on my counter, ready for transfer. She'd scream, probably. But I'd be unreachable. Not because I was hiding. Because I was free. That night, I walked into my kitchen, poured a glass of cold water, and looked out the window, into the dark. No missed calls. No apology. No realization. Just distance. The kind that finally feels earned. Blair had moved on to her next wallet, her next illusion. But I had cut the last thread. The eviction notice came first. She hadn't even called me yet. But I knew. Because I made the call that morning, signed the withdrawal of lease guarantee, and had the final payment reversed. I had the legal standing. The lease was in my name. Her apartment, her sanctuary of scented candles and curated selfies, was no longer hers. 30 days. That's what the paper would say. 30 days to vacate. No extensions. No appeals. And the tuition? That fell apart next. The school's automated system sent her an email. Your enrollment is now pending due to unpaid tuition. Please contact administration to arrange financial resolution. I'd seen a copy of it. No more funding. No more safety net. And still, she didn't call. Not until she had nothing left to pretend with. It was Thursday evening. The light was soft in the kitchen, the kind that makes everything look warmer than it feels. I was washing the last dish when the phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. Blair. I watched it buzz. Once. Twice. 3 times. The sink dripped. The world held its breath. I didn't move. Didn't reach for the towel. didn't speak. She was calling because she needed, not because she understood. And that made all the difference. I let it ring until the screen dimmed. The silence afterward was so loud it almost sang. A minute later, it rang again. Same name, same desperation buried beneath the ringtone. Still, I let it go. Because this wasn't a moment to save her. This was a moment to let the consequences settle in like winter frost. You don't teach someone self-respect by shielding them from every bruise. You let the bruises form. You let the mirror speak. And the truth was, she was never going to find humility at the bottom of a luxury handbag. She'd have to find it with empty hands. I didn't check the voicemail. I didn't care how frantic it was. I already knew the shape of it. Shock, panic, maybe even some tears. But no apology. Because girls like Blair never say sorry until the lights go out. And even then, it's not for what they did. It's for what they lost. I dried my hands on a clean dish towel, folded it once, and placed it neatly beside the sink. Then I went to the living room, sat in my chair, and picked up the latest scholarship application I'd received for the Whitmore Girls Grant. A 17-year-old girl from a trailer park, top of her class, working 2 jobs to help her little brother buy shoes for school. Her letter was handwritten, careful and hopeful. She called my daughter a hero she never met. I smiled for the first time in hours. Because this was what legacy looked like. Not entitled, not loud, just honest. Across town, I imagined Blair staring at her phone, waiting for a response that would never come. Maybe her boyfriend had stopped answering. Maybe she realized designer bags don't hold dignity. Maybe she looked around that cold apartment and, for the first time, felt the air crack without someone there to hold her up. I hoped so, because I loved her. But I wasn't going to keep her warm by burning myself. The phone rang once more. I picked it up this time. Not to answer, to power it off. Then I sat back, exhaled, and closed my eyes. It was a barbecue, just family, nothing fancy. My nephew Liam had offered to host it at his place. Folding chairs in the backyard, paper plates stacked beside the coleslaw, a radio playing old Motown hits. Easy conversation, familiar laughter. The kind of gathering that didn't ask for anything except your appetite and your time. I hadn't been in the mood, if I'm honest. But Dolores told me to go. Said, you need to be seen living your life. So I did. I brought potato salad and wore my favorite cardigan, the one with the little bluebirds on it. And for a while it felt good. Normal. Until it didn't. Until I heard her voice. Are you proud of yourself? The air snapped quiet. I turned. Blair stood at the gate, arms folded, jaw tight, hair slicked back like armor. She wasn't dressed like herself. No silk, no shine, just a wrinkled tank top and jeans that didn't fit right. The kind of clothes you wear when the card doesn't swipe and the Uber never arrives. Her eyes scanned the cousins, the uncles, the people who had once called her bright, gifted, the spitting image of Lauren. And she raised her voice. Just enough. Just to sting. She left me homeless, cut me off. In the middle of school, she didn't even give me a warning, just pulled everything. My rent, my car, my tuition. Who does that to their own blood? Some gasped. One of the younger cousins looked horrified. And me? I stood up. Slow, calm, no theatrics. I took a step forward and looked her right in the face, the same face I once kissed 1,000 times goodnight. Then I said it. 7 words. Soft, precise, like a match in a dry forest. You called me a servant, remember that? The backyard fell silent again, not out of shock this time, but understanding. Because now, the mask was off. Hers. Mine. Everything. Blair's lips parted like she might argue, but no words came. So I added, gently, now you'll learn to serve yourself. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't list the years I paid her way. The tears I swallowed, the savings I drained. I didn't have to. The truth stood beside me like a witness. Blair scoffed, but it came out weak. So that's it? You're just done? Yes, I said. I'm finally done pretending money means love. She looked around the yard. The cousins she used to charm. The aunties who once bragged about her Instagram. No one rushed to her side. They didn't hate her. But they saw me now, and they saw what I'd carried. Without another word, she turned and walked away. The gate creaked behind her, like a door closing on a chapter no one wanted to reread. I sat back down, picked up my plate, and smiled politely at the aunt next to me. "Potato salad's still cold," I said. She smiled back. "And your backbone's still solid." That night, I sat by my window with a blanket and a sense of peace I hadn't earned until now. For years, I'd accepted crumbs in exchange for devotion. I'd funded the delusion that I was needed instead of loved. But those 7 words? They weren't revenge. They were a boundary. The first one I'd ever drawn. Lauren's grave sat in the back corner of Hollow Grove, under an elm tree that shed like clockwork every fall. I'd been visiting for 16 years, and yet this time felt different. This time, I wasn't coming to grieve. I was coming to apologize. I brought hydrangeas, her favorite. Blue, just like the summer dress she wore on the day she told me she was pregnant. God, she had been radiant. And terrified. I remember holding her hands and telling her, "You already have everything you need to be a good mother." I knelt down, brushed the fallen leaves away, and placed the flowers gently beside the marker. Then I sat. Not on the bench. On the grass. Close. And I spoke. I let her become someone you wouldn't know. My voice was calm. It didn't tremble. I thought I was keeping you alive by giving her everything, but all I did was bury you behind designer handbags and weekend flights to Paris. The wind didn't answer, but the stillness was listening. I let her talk down to me, Lauren. I let her call me a servant in front of strangers. I didn't even correct her. I just sat there, letting my love make me small. That part hurt, saying it aloud, not because it wasn't true, but because it had always been. I wanted so badly to keep her safe, to make her happy. But I didn't teach her how to be decent. I didn't teach her how to struggle. And now she's flailing in the wind, blaming me for cutting the branch she never learned to stand on. I looked up at the sky. No clouds, just blue and brutal honesty. I should have said no sooner. I should have made her work for something. Anything. I leaned forward and touched the corner of the stone. But I'm fixing it now. Not out of revenge, not to punish her, but because I owe you a family name that doesn't bow for breadcrumbs. I owe you a legacy that isn't dripping with shame. I pulled out a folded brochure from my purse, the first draft of the scholarship flyer, the Whitmore Girls Grant. Full tuition for local girls who'd been through real storms. No frills, just courage, just heart. "I used your name," I whispered, "because I want people to remember you, not the girl who forgot where she came from." I stayed a while longer. Let the quiet soak through me. Let the pain settle in the places I didn't know still ached. Before I left, I said one more thing. She's going to fall. Hard. And I'll be here when she decides to climb. But I won't build her a ladder again. She'll have to find her own. I stood up, dusted off my skirt, and walked back to the car with my shoulders square. This wasn't grief anymore. This was redemption. For Lauren, for me, and maybe one day, for Blair too. The eviction notice landed on her door like a slap. Blair called the complex office, fuming, demanded answers, threatened legal action. But the manager was calm. "Lease was under your grandmother's name," she pulled out. "You've got 30 days. That was the beginning of her unraveling. Not the car, not the trip to Italy that never happened. This was the part she couldn't style her way out of. No amount of curated Instagram posts could hide a notice taped to a luxury apartment door. And the school? That came next. Her student account had been frozen. Tuition, unpaid. Enrollment on hold. Her class portal locked her out. No warning. No exception. That's when the calls began again. 3 the first day. 5 the next. All ignored. By the end of the week, my voicemail box was full. Not that I checked it. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't silence born of spite. It was silence born of self-preservation. She needed to feel it. The absence. The void she'd carved by treating love like a transaction and family like a service line. I had given her everything but consequences. Now I was giving her nothing else. The final message she left came 2 days after the school notice. I didn't even need to play it. I saw the transcription on my phone. I get it. You've made your point. You hate me. You want me to fail. Well, guess what? I am. Happy now? I'm alone. Everyone's gone. Jasper stopped answering. I'm sleeping on someone's couch. You win. But I wasn't trying to win. That was the saddest part. This wasn't a game. It was the lesson I should have taught her years ago. That people aren't required to keep loving you when you spit on their hands and call it humor. That entitlement is just another word for emptiness dressed in designer. That no one, not even me, owes you loyalty after you treat them like property. I didn't cry when I read that message. I didn't ache. I felt clear. I made myself tea, watched the sun settle behind the trees, folded laundry like nothing had happened, because nothing new had. This was just the truth finally catching up with the girl who'd been outrunning it on my dime. She said I wanted her to fail. She was wrong. I wanted her to break. Because sometimes you have to break before you remember what it means to rebuild. I thought about calling her, just once, to say I still love you. But that's the problem. She's always known I love her, and she's always used it like a weapon. So instead, I powered my phone off and slid it in the drawer. I wasn't abandoning her. I was letting her meet herself, alone, cold, without backup, without illusion. The echo in that apartment she no longer owned? That was my answer. And maybe one day, when the noise of rage and shame faded, she'd hear it clearly. Not, I hate you. Not, you deserve this. Just, you called me a servant. And now, you serve yourself. I heard about the job from Dolores, of course. She always said she wasn't a gossip, just well-informed. You're not going to believe this, she told me, her voice dropping like a curtain. She's cleaning dorm bathrooms, wearing rubber gloves. Some kids took pictures. I didn't ask to see them. I didn't need to. Because the image already lived in my mind. Blair, in a janitor's uniform, kneeling beside a bucket, scrubbing at the messes left behind by the very people she used to laugh with at country club brunches. It wasn't poetic justice. It wasn't even satisfying. It was just necessary. For the first time in her life, she was being paid to clean up after others instead of ordering someone else to do it for her. And maybe, just maybe, she was realizing what it felt like to be invisible. A lesson I'd swallowed in silence for years. I didn't reach out. Not to scold, not to comfort, not to offer a ride home. Because part of me knew, if I did, she'd fall right back into the script. The wounded heiress, the poor little girl whose mean old Nana cut her off for no reason. But this wasn't punishment. This was her reset. Word traveled quickly in her circle. The whispers spread like smoke. She's broke. She works with the janitor staff. I heard her parents cut her off. What stung most wasn't the job. It was the silence. Her friends stopped answering. Invitations disappeared. No more brunches, no more boutique parties, no more nights out funded by my bank account. The same people who once clung to her like glitter now scattered the moment the shine faded. And in that way, she and I weren't so different after all, because I remembered how fast people stop seeing you when you're no longer useful, when your house is modest, your clothes are older, when your hands don't shake from rage, but from rheumatoid arthritis. I remembered what it felt like to be called the help at a brunch table I paid for. Now Blair knew that feeling too, and it wasn't rage I felt. It was understanding. One afternoon, I took the long way home from the grocery store. I passed her campus, just as the sun was starting to drop behind the buildings. That's when I saw her, hair pulled back tight, rubber gloves on, pushing a cleaning cart toward one of the older dorm buildings, head down, no makeup, no audience. She didn't see me, and I didn't stop. I just looked, quietly. The part of me that had raised her wanted to run to her, offer her a ride, a coat, a bowl of soup. But the woman I'd become, the one who learned the difference between love and enabling, knew better, because if I saved her now, she'd never save herself. So I let the car roll past, windows up, heart steady, and in the rearview mirror, I caught one last glimpse of her kneeling at a doorway, scrubbing the edge of a tile. The girl in gloves, not royalty, not elite, not abandoned, just human. And maybe, finally, teachable.